Ready for a deep dive? Today, we're off to Oz.
Down the yellow brick road and beyond, right?
You got it. But hold on to your hats, because we're not just revisiting a childhood favorite, we're talking a 1900 edition of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. We're talking Baum's original introduction, the whole shebang.
The whole shebang, huh? Now that's what I call a deep dive.
You know it. And get this wasn't your average run-of-the-mill book. We're talking a quarto, which is basically a fancy word for large Coro, printed in not one, not two, but three colors.
Three colors, wow. That must have been something else back then.
You bet. It cost a cool $9.25 in 1900. That's like, what, a gourmet coffee today. Clearly, Baum and the publishers were aiming for something pretty special.
They were aiming high, that's for sure.
Right. And speaking of Baum, his introduction is like a window right into his mind. He calls Oz a modernized fairy tale. Makes you wonder, what did modern even mean back then? I mean, 1900, that's over a century ago.
It's a whole different world, isn't it?
Totally. So what was Baum trying to do differently?
Well, think about it. Every generation, they take those old stories, those fairy tales, and they give them a makeover, you know? They make them their own.
They reimagine them, you mean?
Exactly. And Baum's time was no different. It was a time of massive change industrialization, cities booming, the dawn of a whole new century.
Yeah, you're right. Things were moving fast. The horse and buggy days were on their way out.
Exactly. And it's interesting because Baum really ditched a lot of those old fairy tale tropes, damsels in distress, magic spells, you know, the usual stuff. He wanted something that resonated with this new world, this yearning for something different.
So he was modernizing, but he also talks about wanting to create something pleasurable for children to read. Was he just trying to entertain, or was there something more going on beneath the surface?
Now that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because whether they mean to or not, stories, they become a reflection of their time, you know? It's like they can't help but absorb the anxieties, the hopes, the dreams of the people living through them.
That's a really good point.
Even those sanitized fairy tales we share today, like the Brothers Grimm, you know, those collections, you dig a little deeper and you still find those hints of darkness lurking beneath the surface.
Oh, absolutely. There's always a little bit of an edge, even in the kids' stories.
Exactly. So as we journey deeper into Oz, keep that question in mind. Did Baum achieve his goal, pure pleasure? Or do those deeper meanings, those reflections of his time, do they seep through? Whether he planned it or not.
So we've got Baum aiming for this pleasurable reading experience, right? But when you really dig into the details about Dorothy's life in Kansas, well, let's just say it's not all sunshine and lollipops.
No, not exactly a fairy tale beginning, is it?
Not quite. I mean, right off the bat, we get that image of the cyclone cellar.
Yeah, not the cheeriest thought, right?
Definitely sets a certain tone. And then there's the description of the Kansas landscape itself. Gray, barren, even mentions crop failures. Not exactly the land of Oz, is it?
No, definitely a sense of hardship there, a feeling of being stuck.
Right. But, and this is important, Dorothy clearly loves her aunt and uncle. She finds joy in those simple things, Toto, her little check dress. It's not all doom and gloom.
Exactly, and that's what's so fascinating about Baum's portrayal of America. At the turn of the century, you had this incredible progress happening, technology booming, cities growing, this real sense of possibility in the air.
Whole new century, a fresh start.
Exactly, but then on the flip side, you had a lot of hardship. Farmers struggling, inequality widening. A lot of people probably felt like they were being swept away by forces they couldn't control.
Like Dorothy in that cyclone. Just completely at the mercy of this massive, powerful force.
Exactly. And that's what makes you wonder if Oz isn't just a fantastical escape, but maybe, just maybe, a reflection of those hopes and fears. You've got the dazzling Emerald City, all that beauty and wonder, but then you've got the dangers lurking around every corner.
Okay, whoa. Now I'm really seeing those deeper layers.
Right. It makes you think.
It does. So we've got Dorothy caught in this whirlwind of change. She lands in Oz, and guess what? There's no magic wand solution waiting for her. She's got to work for it. She's got to earn her way back home by helping others, which is actually a pretty cool message when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just handed to her. She has to figure it out.
Exactly. And you know what else is interesting? The characters themselves. They're not your typical fairy tale archetypes. They're flawed. They're insecure. Even the good guys have their moments.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely not perfect.
Like, take the Cowardly Lion, for instance. Who hasn't felt like that at some point?
Totally. Wanting to be brave, wanting to face your fears, that's such a universal human thing.
Right. And it makes you wonder, could these characters actually represent different parts of ourselves? Like each one embodying a different aspect of what it means to be human?
Oh, that's a fascinating thought.
isn't it? And what's even more interesting is that while Baum shows us these characters yearning for something brains, a heart, courage, he never really defines what they truly mean. It's left open to interpretation.
He does, doesn't he? He leaves it open-ended.
Yeah. It's like he's saying, okay, you figure it out. What does it mean to have brains? What does it mean to have heart? What does true courage look like? It's
Yeah.
pretty deep for a children's book, don't you think?
It really is. He's prompting us to ask those bigger questions about our own values, our own aspirations. What are we searching for in our own lives?
And speaking of searching, can we talk about that ending? Because, wow, talk about abrupt. One minute Oz is there, the next he's gone, up in a hot air balloon. And Dorothy is whisked back to Kansas, just like that. It's all very, I don't know, unsatisfying. Is that it? Did anything really change?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? There's this unresolved quality to the ending, this ambiguity. Did the characters truly transform? Did Oz actually solve anything or just kind of delay things?
It's like, did anything really get resolved?
Exactly. And it makes you think, maybe that's the point Baum's trying to make. Life rarely ties things up in a neat little bow. There's no magic solution. We have to find our own solutions, forge our own paths, just like Dorothy did.
I love that. So even though she goes on this incredible journey, she ends up right back where she started. But she's not the same Dorothy, is she?
Exactly. She's learned something, she's grown. And maybe that's the real magic of Oz, isn't it?
Makes you think, doesn't it? About those characters, I mean.
Scarecrow, the Tin Man, the lion.
Yeah, like they're all searching for something. Brains, a heart, courage.
Mm.
What if those are things we're all striving for in our own way?
Exactly. It's like those desires are part of what makes us human.
Right. We all want to be smarter, more compassionate, braver.
Absolutely. And here's something interesting to consider. None of them actually fully achieve their goal, do they?
Now that you mention it, the Scarecrow never becomes a scholar. The Tin Man doesn't find perfect love. And the lion, well, he still has his moments.
Exactly. So does that mean we're always striving, always growing, but never actually reaching that ideal state? Or is the journey itself, the continual learning and becoming, is that what truly matters?
Wow, that's a really good question. It makes you think about what's more important, the destination or the journey.
It really does. And maybe there's no right or wrong answer. Maybe it's different for everyone.
You know, when we started this deep dive, I have to admit, I thought we were just taking a little trip down memory lane with the Wizard of Oz. But this has been eye-opening.
Right. It's amazing how a story can do that. Speak to us across generations. Tap into something universal.
It really is. It just goes to show you never know what you might find when you take a deep dive into something, even something you think you already know. So next time you stumble upon a childhood classic, don't be afraid to revisit it. You might be surprised what you discover. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.